Have you ever been on a plane when something felt off, maybe a weird noise? Maybe some turbulence? Maybe that one passenger who claps when the wheels touch down? But have you ever been on a plane when everything just stopped? Sound, wind rushing, no engines. Not an explosion. Not a bang. Just silence. The engines go quiet. The screens go black. And you're sitting in a 130-ton metal tube, falling from 41,000 feet with no power, no instruments, and no place to land. This actually happened. This is the true story of Air Canada Flight 143. The flight that became known as the Gimli glider. And it's a story that proves sometimes the difference between a miracle and a disaster comes down to something as simple as a decimal point. I'm Ada, and welcome back to World with Ada. Let's set the scene. July 23, 1983. A Boeing 767-200 is getting ready for a routine flight from Montreal to Edmonton. Stop in Ottawa along the way. Now, this plane was brand new. Air Canada had only gotten it 4 months earlier. It was cutting-edge technology. State-of-the-art cockpit, digital displays, the whole package. But here's the thing. This was Canada's first metric airplane. Everything was measured in kilograms instead of pounds. And that small detail, that's where the nightmare begins. The fuel gauges on this plane were broken. The cockpit screens that normally showed how much fuel was in the tanks, they were blank. Now, under normal circumstances, you'd ground the plane. You'd fix the gauges. You'd wait until everything was working properly. But Air Canada had a workaround. They'd measure the fuel manually using a dipstick. You know, like checking the oil in your car. They'd stick a measuring rod into the tanks, see how much fuel was there, and then calculate how much more to add. Simple enough, right? Well, not quite. The crew calculated they needed 22,300 kilograms of fuel for the flight. They did a dipstick check and found 7,682 liters already in the tanks. Now, to figure out how much more fuel to add, they needed to convert liters to kilograms. The specific gravity of the fuel was 0.803 kilograms per liter. So here's what the math should have looked like. 7,682 liters times 0.803 equals 6,169 kilograms already on board. 22,300 minus 6,169 equals 16,131 kilograms needed. And at 0.803 kilograms per liter, that meant they needed to add about 20,088 liters of fuel. That's the correct calculation. But that's not what happened. Here's where things go very, very wrong. The ground crew and the pilots used a conversion factor of 1.77. That number is the weight of a liter of fuel, in pounds. They were supposed to use 0.803 for kilograms. They used 1.77 instead. Do you see the problem? Using the wrong conversion factor, their calculation looked like this: 7,682 liters times 1.77 equals 13,597 kilograms. That's what they thought they had on board. 22,300 minus 13,597 equals 8,703 kilograms. That's what they thought they needed. 8,703 divided by 1.77 equals 4,916 liters. That's how much fuel they added. Instead of adding 20,088 liters, they added just 4,916. Instead of 22,300 kilograms of fuel, the aircraft took off with just 10,100 kilograms. Less than half of what it needed. And here's the wildest part. They double-checked their math 3 times. 3 times. But because everyone was using the same wrong conversion factor, they got the same wrong answer every single time. Captain Bob Pearson looked at the numbers and said, "That's it, we're going." And they did. The flight takes off from Montreal, makes a short stop in Ottawa, then heads west toward Edmonton. Everything seems normal. Passengers are reading their magazines. Flight attendants are serving drinks. The crew is chatting. Then, somewhere over Manitoba, at 41,000 feet, the first warning light appears. Sound, alarm beeping. Captain Pearson and First Officer Maurice Quintal look at the panel. A fuel pump in the left wing is showing low pressure. They think it's just a faulty pump. A mechanical issue. Nothing to worry about. Then another warning light comes on. Then another. Sound, multiple alarm sounds overlapping. More fuel pumps are failing. It's not a mechanical problem. The fuel is gone. Quintal tells the cabin crew to prepare for an emergency landing. They're going to divert to Winnipeg. Then the first engine shuts down. Captain Pearson starts descending. Then the second engine shuts down. Sound, engines winding down to silence. And now, silence. Complete, total, terrifying silence. Captain Pearson later said, "The cockpit became the blackest place in the world. The cockpit screens went black. The navigation systems failed. The transponder stopped transmitting. Air traffic control lost them on radar. The controller says, we have lost them on the screen." At 26,500 feet, still 75 miles from Winnipeg, the flight is completely out of fuel. They're flying a 130-ton glider. Here's where the story takes an incredible turn. Captain Bob Pearson wasn't just an airline pilot. He was also an experienced glider pilot. He co-owned a small sailplane and flew it for fun on weekends. And right now, that hobby is about to save everyone's life. Pearson needs to fly the 767 at the perfect glide speed. Too fast and he'll waste altitude. Too slow and the plane could stall. He chooses 220 knots. A small propeller deploys from the aircraft. It's called a ram air turbine. It drops into the airflow and provides minimal hydraulic power. Just enough to keep the plane controllable. But there's another problem. When Pearson and Quintal search the emergency checklist for instructions on flying the aircraft with both engines out, they find nothing. The section doesn't exist. Because nobody ever imagined a commercial 767 losing both engines in flight. They're writing the procedure as they go. Quintal starts calculating. Using mechanical backup instruments and data from air traffic control, he figures out their glide ratio. In 10 nautical miles, they lose 5,000 feet, that's a glide ratio of roughly 12 to 1. They're not going to make it to Winnipeg. That's when Quintal remembers something. He used to be a fighter pilot. He was stationed at an old Royal Canadian Air Force base in Gimli, Manitoba, years ago. It's closer than Winnipeg. And it has a long runway. He tells Pearson. They change course toward Gimli. What they don't know that runway is no longer a runway. July 23, 1983, is Family Day for the Winnipeg Sports Car Club. The old military runway has been converted into a racetrack. The asphalt is covered with go-karts, race cars, families, tents, bicycles. Kids are running around. Spectators line both sides of the track. Campers are parked everywhere. And because the 767 has no engines, it makes almost no sound as it approaches. Nobody on the ground has any idea what's coming. As the 767 approaches, Pearson and Quintal realize they're coming in too high and too fast. Without hydraulic pressure, they can't extend the flaps to slow down. Pearson makes a decision that seems insane. He performs a side slip. This is a maneuver used in gliders and light aircraft. You cross the controls, applying rudder one way and ailerons the other, essentially flying the aircraft sideways. It lets you lose altitude quickly without gaining speed. This is almost never attempted in a large commercial jetliner. But Pearson has no other choice. The side slip disrupts airflow to the ram air turbine, reducing hydraulic power even further. The aircraft becomes difficult to control. Without main power, they use a gravity drop to lower the landing gear. The main gear locks into position. The nose gear doesn't fully lock. The 767 touches down on a runway filled with go-karts. Spectators scatter in every direction. Screeching metal, sparks flying. The nose gear collapses. The front of the aircraft slams into the ground, sending sparks and debris flying. The plane drags along the tarmac. Then, it stops. Passengers cheering. 61 passengers. 8 crew members. Everyone survives. The only injuries come from passengers using the rear emergency slide. Because the nose gear has collapsed, the tail is 3 stories in the air. Some people are injured sliding down from that height. A small fire in the nose is quickly put out by go-kart racers with handheld fire extinguishers. The 130-ton glider is finally at rest. The Gimli glider becomes one of aviation's most celebrated miracle landings. But not everyone is celebrating. Air Canada's internal investigation leads to consequences. Captain Pearson is demoted for 6 months. First Officer Quintal is suspended for 2 weeks. 3 ground crew members are suspended. A Transport Canada report in 1985 blames errors and insufficient training and safety procedures. The Canadian Aviation Safety Board says Air Canada management is responsible for corporate and equipment deficiencies. But the same report praises the flight and cabin crews for their professionalism and skill. Other pilots later try to replicate the landing in simulators. Every single one of them crashes. The aircraft ends up destroyed in every simulation. In 1985, Pearson and Quintal received the first ever Fédération Aéronautique Internationale diploma for outstanding airmanship. The aircraft itself is repaired and returned to service. It flies for Air Canada until 2008. It eventually retires and is now on display at the Canada Aviation and Space Museum in Ottawa. But the legacy of the Gimli glider lives on. Today, pilot training includes scenarios for total engine failure. Procedures are rewritten. Fuel calculations are double and triple checked with multiple independent verification systems. And the importance of understanding the metric system, that lesson became painfully, dangerously clear. So what does the Gimli glider teach us? Sometimes the most dangerous threats aren't mechanical failures or equipment malfunctions. Sometimes they're just simple math mistakes. A decimal point. A conversion factor. That's all it took. 1 decimal place stood between 69 people surviving and the worst aviation disaster in Canadian history. But it also teaches us something else. When disaster struck, Captain Bob Pearson didn't panic. He relied on skills he'd learned outside the cockpit. Skills as a glider pilot that had nothing to do with flying commercial airliners. The best preparation isn't always the obvious kind. Sometimes your most valuable skills come from the most unexpected places. I'm Ada. And this has been the story of the Gimli glider. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the world's most incredible stories. And let me know in the comments what other aviation mysteries would you like us to explore. Thanks for watching World with Ada. Stay curious, stay safe, and always double check your math. It might just save your life.